Welcome to
Cats from the Peak,
where God's favorites link up. My name is Lara.
My name is Kemy.
And today we have a special guest. We have a friend of the podcast, a friend outside of the podcast, who's going to drop some gems, share her story. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But as you can see, she's sitting right in between both of us. We're going to have her introduce herself a little bit. We're going to read her bio and all of the things. But just a little bit about Marriage Pinnacle. Marriage Pinnacle is our marriage support platform where we cater to millennial couples of color, where we provide resourcing such as tips, tools, ebooks, conversation cards, all of the things to really get people talking about marriage, wanting to cultivate healthy marriages. And we say it every episode, that at the foundation of every healthy marriage is a healthy family, and healthy families are the cornerstone of the community. And so, you want to add to that, Kemy?
Sorry.
Come on.
Yeah, like I always just emphasize that our podcast is more of an extension of what we had doing our IG lives.
Correct. Yeah.
And for our beautiful, lovely peak seekers, I have a new contraption.
Oh my gosh.
In my mouth.
Oh Lord.
And so, if y'all notice that my speech is significantly different than prior episodes, that is why. CH's very hard.
She's gonna go
the
through the
letter
whole
D's are very hard. anything with the H after a consonant, struggle. So please just bear with me. Thank you.
Thank you. So for our audio listeners, if you hear something a little off, it is Kemy, karaoke mems. It's just that she wants the perfect smile, and that's sacrifice. Beauty is pain.
And I'm doing it for y'all, because y'all want to see like a nice, bright.
I mean, we could have flew to Turkey. You could have got some turkey teeth, but
nah, I'm good.
Turkey teeth, I don't know. Turkey teeth is where it's at. Look it up if you don't know what it is. Turkey teeth is when you got
turkey teeth is crazy.
Yeah, they really. Anyway, we digress. So obviously, Marriage Pinnacle, we provide coaching. We have close support groups. We do one-on-one coaching, things of that sort. And we really want to make sure that we're instilling hope into marriages, because at the end of the day, we want strong marriages, and we want to change the narrative on what marriage really is, because it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So if you're new here, we want you to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, because that lets us know that we're doing something right. It lets us know that we're giving content that people want to see and hear. And so if you're staying tuned with us, if you're new here, welcome. If you're a peak seeker, welcome back. So before we get into our internet chokeholds, which is where we kind of talk about what's going on in the media, in our sphere, I want to introduce our lovely guest for today. So her name is Kemy, aka Styled by Kemy, and not only is she
our very own it girl.
She is. Come on now. I did call her Styled by Kemy, but I'm gonna read her bio, and then I'm gonna let her plug herself, obviously. So Kemi Ajibare is a tech girl and also a personal stylist. She has an unwavering passion for fashion that beautifully aligns with her mission to create and craft timeless, high-quality wardrobes for the everyday person. In her personal life, she's a mom to an amazing and handsome, I added that, handsome little boy, and she enjoys the simple things in life.
I do.
Okay, so can we come on, get some virtual claps for our girl, Kemy.
Hey guys.
Where can people find you, number one?
You guys can find me on Instagram at Styled by Kemy. I'm also on TikTok, Styled by Kemy16. I'm occasionally on Twitter, but all of my activities going on Instagram.
Come on now. All of the looks, all of the finds, all of the words, because she be dropping words too.
Yeah.
When you be on Twitter, you be giving the girlies some stuff
And
though.
on TikTok, you get vulnerable on TikTok.
I just do as the
give it to
spirit
us.
leads.
Come on now.
Oh, that's right.
Did you add that you're a believer?
Oh yes, I love
She
Jesus.
love the Lord. She love the Lord.
I've been through a process, so I'm here sharing my story whenever I'm led. So
Come on now. Oh, you were led here.
I was.
Not
I was.
forced.
I wasn't. I wasn't.
We be touching. She makes me touch people now because I didn't used to touch people. I used to keep my hands to myself.
We're a family. Once you're part of us, you're part of us.
Yes.
So we're happy to have
Okay,
you.
so yes,
you
we are
guys.
we're
I appreciate
welcoming Kemi. And so we're gonna get into our internet chokehold. So Kemi, like we know, we just talk about something and we kind of talk about our take on it. Okay?
All right.
So our internet chokehold today, and you will figure out what our episode is about, is again the narrative that people don't need to get married, there's no point, and we really are seeing I don't want to say even an increase, but we're just seeing a lot of celebrity couples getting divorced. It's nothing new. It
Yeah.
really isn't. It really isn't
Story
anything
as old
new.
as time.
But it's the story as old as time, but it's just happening so much more. And unfortunately, with celebrity couples, we kind of see that marriage is disposable, right?
Yeah,
like
that's what it
it's
is.
you can get married today and not be married in 72 days.
Mm-hmm.
You can get married tomorrow and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately you see that people are married and then it gets messy. It's like you see the love that they have on the red carpet, and for us, me and Mamie talk about it all the time, that we don't really see any couples as couples goals, but what we see portrayed, we see, love, we see, the kissing and then this and all of the things, and then
Out of nowhere.
it's
Over.
and it's messy.
Yeah. And I feel like social media, because of the nature of social media, you feel invested in these couples, right?
Yeah.
Like, you see when they get engaged, you
Yeah.
see when they have their first baby, you see when they buy their first house, they take
Yeah.
you on a house tour. And so it becomes like, I think they call it like parasocial relationships.
Yeah, yeah.
Like where you feel like you know these
You
people,
feel like you
people
know
are your
them,
friends.
even though you don't.
Even though you have no idea.
You don't know them.
anything was going on, because the nature of social media is that you show what you want to show.
Yeah.
Can you say that? I mean, I know you might not want to because of
The show.
the show, but I just feel like I need to highlight that because
Yes, you
people
show what you wanna
what
show.
they want to show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when you see all the grand and amazing things,
Yeah.
a lot of couples are not coming online and posting like, yo, he get on my nerves today, or like he didn't give me this today, or she pissed me off last night.
And then when
Like,
they do, what happens? People are like, get us out the group chat.
yeah,
You don't want to know.
Yeah.
So-
because there are some, like, I never really got into like the YouTube families,
Yeah.
the vloggers.
Oh, I like them.
Like then you will really like
Yeah.
they kind of show you
They're more
everything.
vulnerable, yeah.
Because you're literally just following their lives. But in terms of like celebrities, like
Yeah.
we talked about like Jeannie Mae. I know that was really tough for Lara. She loved
Really?
Jeannie Mae and
I-
Jeezy for some reason.
Really?
Don't say for some reason. For some reason, I just really liked their relationship. Granted, I don't know what it was centered on. I don't know what the
Right.
foundation was.
You like
But
what was
I just
presented.
like what was presented. And I think it's because I liked the fact that Jeannie Mai, like, talked about she never wanted to have kids. And then she
Yeah.
got to the point where she was, like, in love with somebody enough to want to go down that path. You know what I mean? So I feel like I just loved that part. But now to see it be so messy and nasty,
Yeah.
it just...
It is tough, like, because we talked about Tiana and Iman.
Yeah.
And now, like,
That
every
part.
day they're posting about, like,
Yeah.
divorce court. He's
Yeah.
asking for her money before the marriage. And then, we all now have opinions on something that's just not our business.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
And so, I don't know, so... Kemi, what's your thoughts on, like, celebrity relationships and the downfall of them on such a public stage?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'm with the same sentiments as Laura. I've never idolized any celebrities at all, because the only thing we should model is what? Jesus, right?
Come
So
on.
it's just like, I personally, because I am in the creative space, I also know that people show you what they want to show you. But
Absolutely.
marriage is work, as
Yeah.
I've learned.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised. I think some of the couples, like some of them, you just kind of like, whoa, and then you kind of hear their stories as they progress, and you're
Yeah.
just like, oh, I see. The red
Yeah.
flags were probably
There.
there.
Yep,
Right.
They
that's
just
it.
probably ignored it.
Exactly.
You know.
Come
so.
on now. check out our red flags, green flags episode because that's so true. I think a lot of times like it's like the glitz and glamour of the wedding or this and that, and like you see all of these red flags that you know are problems, and you're just like, you know what, full steam ahead.
Right. And then we haven't actually talked about love bombing before.
Oh yeah, that's a thing.
Love bombing is real because that's sort of like a way to kind of like blind the red flag. It's like a red flag filter.
It's a filter.
Like you don't see it.
You don't see it because everything else look good.
Because you get flowers every day.
I'm getting I love
you.
You
get flued out.
Yeah.
So you don't see the behind. You don't see all the red flags that are literally right there, but you just don't see it because you're getting love bombed.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. Women do it too.
Oh yeah.
Men and women love bomb.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so I feel like that's another thing we haven't really touched on. But
no, we haven't.
It's like another facet of like the red flag. Let's get into it.
We gonna get into it. Don't worry.
Especially in our culture.
Come on.
One thing about African men,
they gonna give you the gift.
one thing about African men, they will love bomb you to the altar.
To the altar and doing dirt the whole time. On the way down the altar. Still
Just say
doing
you are
dirt.
the one woman that I've always loved.
Okay.
You are the woman of my dream. From the minute I saw you,
Meanwhile,
I knew it was you.
They got a whole
Right.
situation.
whole family.
Whole situation.
That's how all my American friends like. And Nigerian man comes to you tell you that he wants to marry you. He had 4 wives already. He been in.
That's so sad.
I mean, don't play on all our men. They not all
Some
like
of them
that.
are good.
Yeah, some of them are good.
But you're not saying you want to love me right. You love me right away. They be doing that.
No, they do. They do. You're right. You're right.
That's a
You're
red
right.
flag to me.
You ain't say that on the episode.
To me and my homegirls. Not like that.
So, I think that, like, with that being said, right, I think that we can laugh and joke about it, right? But I think there is, like, a duality, right? There's a duality between, sometimes when it comes to divorce, you do need to get out of a situation. It's unhealthy. It's not healthy for your mental health.
You're not
growing. You're stunted. It's unsafe physically. Like, there are reasons when we will be like, okay, maybe this was for the best. You know what I mean? But then on the other flip side, we know it's devastating, right? We know it is the loss of something, right? It was something you thought was going to be forever. You thought it was something that, was going to stand the test of time, that you would be able to weather the storms. And so it's like, how do we kind of filter? And then, like, let's talk about it. We're 3 Nigerian women, right? American women, whatever. And the culture plays a role in that, right? Where it's like, we don't even say the D word.
No.
It's like we see all the signs leading to something and we don't say the D word. So, like, can we talk about that?
That's deep stuff.
No, because I actually really like what you said, because so often when we think about divorce, it's like, oh my God, the worst thing. Like, our entire platform is built on, like, helping couples avoid divorce. Like, even starting from dating and engaged, like setting things up so that you don't eventually find yourself in that place. But like you said, like, sometimes, like we were just talking about it, like, sometimes when you see a celebrity couple, you're like, oh my God, I'm so sad. But then sometimes you see them break up and you're like, thank God.
Thank God. We knew that. We knew that wasn't going to last.
Right? Or thank God he got away from her, And so in some cases, it can be a freeing. And, like, so it's like we have this thing, like, is a divorce the end? Is it the end is a thing? Is this are we mourning this? Or is this a new beginning? Are we celebrating?
That's it. That's good.
And so, like, Kemi, that's, like, one of the main reasons you're here. To kind of talk about how did you transition from that mourning period to feeling like freedom, like, a butterfly, that cocoon.
Come on now.
And
a phoenix. A phoenix of rose from ashes.
There you go. That's better. That's better. But before we get to Kemi, we're gonna kind of do background and talk about, like, some statistics around divorce in our community. And so overall, African American couples tend to have higher divorce rates compared to other racial ethnic groups. And according to the National Center for Health Statistics, the divorce rate for African American couples is higher than that for white, Hispanic, and Asian. So, Laura, you can.
And so, we say that because, like, divorce to us, we feel like divorce is commonplace now. Like, you say it and there's no, like, just get divorced. Like, if you read any comments of any, like, so obviously we're talking about celebrities as we talk about internet chokeholds and we progress into our relationship gems, but like anytime you see a celebrity, you see the little zigzag line with a couple when they break up in the comments, it was like, so what, just divorce, and it's like it's not a big deal. So like there's no weight behind getting a divorce anymore, right? And so even a study done in 2019 found that in per every thousand women, every 1,000 married women, 31 were black women. Wow. As opposed to 18 who were white, right? So like in our, which is again why we are really, really honing in on millennial couples of color, because that is almost double, right? So every 1,000, there's 31 as opposed to 18 divorced women, black women, right? And so stats also show that like when there's a higher likelihood that you're going to get divorced when education comes into play, right? So obviously we think about culturally, a lot of times Africans are higher, we have higher educations, oftentimes, not generalization, not all the time. And so those are things that typically combat divorce. Also income, when you have a higher income. But as we see in our network, as we see in our just in our development, those are not protective factors anymore, right? Like the fact that I'm making more money, I know I'll be all right if I gotta go. You know what I mean? If I gotta go,
literally,
I'm be okay. Because a lot of times, you know, back in the day, that was the reason why people stayed. Like I'm gonna stay because, like, this is because marriage is still is a business transaction to some people, right? And so we have to like look at those stats, right? And then also if we're thinking about the things that influence divorce, right? SES, right? And so if we're talking about like African Americans as a whole, lower SES is attributed with higher rates of divorce. So when you have more poverty, obviously less income, divorce rates tend to be higher. Education, we just talked about it. Socioeconomic, sorry. That was not, I was about to say, that is not, stop it. The middle schoolers are saying socioeconomic status. Yes, they are. Don't do that.
That's an acronym.
And then also, the last thing that we're going to touch on is age, right? So it's interesting, right? Because the younger you get married, the higher rate of divorce. But it's interesting.
Okay.
Sorry. You need some water? I'm get you some. Okay. All right. Okay. But it's interesting though, right? That culturally, when we hit a certain age,
That's expectation.
it's an expectation.
Crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That like you hit that 23, and it's like,
the eggs are drying up.
where's your ring?
Time to go.
Why aren't you engaged?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's interesting that like you see that younger ages is associated with higher rates of divorce, but culturally they want us to get married younger.
I mean, think about military couples, right? Like,
they
get they go into the army or the Air Force. They all get married at like 18,
18,
and they're on their second marriage by 30.
Bruh.
You know,
25 sometimes.
right away.
25, like, because think about it, 18 to 25, that's still 7 years of marriage.
That's a long time.
Like, yeah, so it's crazy. You know, but as we're talking, so we just gave some stats on African American, but we also kind of want to talk about like us being, so we're 3 Nigerian women, but like that's also a thing as well, right? So like there are some changes going into, like when you're looking at African countries as a whole, right? Culturally, like we talked about, religion, culture, it's like intersected with like, we don't get divorced.
Yeah.
It's taboo to get divorced.
It's a sin.
It's a sin to get divorced.
They tell you.
You know, all of those things play a role as to why people stay married.
Yep.
But then again, they stay married, but are they happy in marriage? You know, is there joy in them? Is there satisfaction in their marriage?
What are they sacrificing?
What are they sacrificing?
In order to be,
to
not break these laws. Or rules
and then
or
you think
norms.
about it also like as African cultures, as African countries are more collectivistic, and so that just means like collectivistic cultures tend to it's more about the we as opposed to the I, as opposed to the me.
Oh, Lord.
And so you think about like the extended family, right? What is grandma gonna say? What is auntie gonna say? What are the aunts going to say? What are the uncles going to say?
Church members
What
gonna
are
say.
girl? What are the hello? Think about it. speak about it.
Right.
What are the church members going to say?
Sister Abiodun.
Not too much on my mom's name now.
Oh,
Don't
your
say my
mama's
mama's
name?
name.
Stop.
Say somebody else's name.
That's my girl.
Say somebody else's name.
Okay,
But yeah,
sister,
so like
my
all
bad.
of those things like play a role as to why maybe people don't get divorced, and then they not saying that they should, but like they stay a lot longer or they
Yeah.
do stay married, even though all of the signs are there that
Yeah.
this is probably not the best relationship
It's
for
not
you.
healthy for you. Like,
Yeah.
you're not thriving.
You're not thriving, right? And then obviously, when we're thinking about culture, African countries, we probably have to take into consideration the money, the economic factors, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you know, he is taking on a lot of the responsibilities. He is the breadwinner. And so that's why I'm going to stay put.
Yeah.
I ain't going nowhere. You know, and then also legally, like, it's not. Y'all know our legal system in Africa ain't the best, and all
There
in
ain't
different
no legal
African countries.
system.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We
not
can speak. We
really.
can speak for
Ain't no
Nigerian
legal.
countries.
Yeah, you can kind of like work
Finesse.
around any of
Finesse.
it all.
With a little bit of money, with a little bit of cash, you can
you can get through.
finagle,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like the legal system doesn't even help in that regard either. Whereas
Yeah.
here, it's just like, all right, you do these things, and like these are the steps you need to take, and you can get divorced. As
Yeah.
opposed to like, in probably like in Nigeria, it might be a little harder.
Yeah.
You know. So there's like a lot of different things that play into why people get divorced. So,
Yeah.
Memi, what are some top, or Kemi, how about your thoughts on what do you think the top reasons are, and then we'll talk about what are statistically what do you think some of the top reasons people get divorced are?
So I'm gonna speak from a cultural perspective.
Okay.
I would say age,
Mm.
money,
Mm-hmm.
and social status. I feel like those are the top reasons that people get divorced. I'll probably explain that later,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
That's
All
good.
right.
I think you're good. I think
Good.
you're spot on.
Yeah.
I would say my number one would be money. 'Cause That's what
That's a big one.
that's like a general
yeah,
headline you see all the time. I would say definitely communication issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the social status thing too. Like just not really seeing the world the same way, and
Yeah.
being at the same stage of life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. So, statistically or based on research, the top reasons people get divorced are infidelity, which is interesting because
yeah.
funny thing is it's not interesting but I think culturally it's interesting because we like, oh really? That's why people get divorced when we like, oh,
Right.
a lot of people should be divorced, right? But I digress.
No comment.
Yeah.
No
Poor
comment.
communication. Finances, so y'all are both on the money with that. Lack of intimacy, so that's emotional and physical. Poor conflict resolution, and then issues of abuse. So abuse could be emotional abuse, physical abuse.
I'm surprised abuse is not first.
So these are not in order.
Okay.
Those were not in order.
Okay.
Those were not in order.
Okay,
Yeah.
about to say.
Those were not in order. No.
Yeah.
Those are not in order. But those are just some of the
But I
top
think
reasons.
it's interesting because people typically stay in abuse because they don't feel like they can leave.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
numerous reasons. It takes a long time.
It takes a long time.
for people to kind of like leave
Yeah.
abusive situations,
Yeah.
especially physical.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not even talk about intimate partner violence. Let's not even go
Yeah,
there.
that's a whole other.
Yeah, that's a whole episode we'll probably have to talk
Rabbit hole,
on.
yeah.
But
Part two.
Yeah,
part two, right? Exactly. Yeah, I mean, just while we're here, obviously, so let's just talk about it real quick. I feel like if we think about Cassie, like granted they were not married,
Right.
you know, but like she stayed in an abusive relationship, not just physical, right? But like emotionally abusive, mentally abusive, sexually abusive, and granted they were not married and she still stayed for as long as she did. So
Yeah.
like that just goes to show that like these are the top reasons, but again, think about all the people who aren't leaving situations,
Yeah.
you know. So let's get into these questions for Kemi. But before we ask you some questions, we want you to give our listeners a little bit of your backstory. So tell us your story. How old were you when you got married? How long were you married for? Yeah, you can start from wherever far back or as recent as you
I
want.
would try to be as brief but detailed as possible because
Okay.
it's a history.
Okay.
So my name is Kemi, obviously. I got married when I was 22. My ex-husband at that time was 32, so just put things into perspective right there. And I was married for 6 years legally, but I left like the 5th year. Like that's when the whole separation divorce process kind of started. So 6 years technically. And I guess the shorter version of the story is, one, being married young, obviously 22. What do you know? I'm fresh out of college. I haven't really seen the world. So here I am in this relationship from, I think we even started dating when I was 18. So put that into perspective as well. So I didn't really know the world. I just saw this grown man, and I was just like, okay, he's going to take care of me, this and that. You know, like you said, love bombing. You mentioned that earlier. That was a part of it too. Like, he just presented himself so well, where I felt like, okay, like, you know, what else is there to do?
So safe.
I felt safe. And then, you know, every time we go to church, they're like, okay, after you graduate, what are you guys doing? Go get married.
Go get married.
So I was just
That's
like,
it.
okay, that's the next step. I've graduated college, I get married. So got married at 22. First year, it was okay. Second year, third, all of that, it was just a lot. And I'll probably...
So when you say the first year was okay, what was okay about it? Like,
I saw the signs. That's what I meant by okay. I saw the signs, but my thing was, okay, he'll change, right? What did I know? Like, we didn't really even do marriage counseling or nothing like that. We just kind of went to court and got married. There was nothing biblical about the marriage. We just literally just did everything legally. So the first year, like, I saw the signs. I saw it, but I was just like, okay, maybe this is just what it is. You know, like, I grew up, my parents are no longer together. So I saw my mom take a lot of things.
Yeah.
So naturally in my mind, I thought, okay, because he's acting up, this is just something I'll have to deal with. And down the line, he'll change, right? It's just the first year of marriage, no big deal. So yeah.
wow, okay. And so I know that you have a son. So when was your son born within the marriage?
2017. So I got married in 2014. So about 3 years later.
Okay.
So during that process, actually, I forgot to leave that part out. We tried to have a baby like right away. The first year I had a miscarriage, got pregnant that year again, kind of lost the baby because I was like super sick. I was in and out the hospital, and consecutively for the next 2.5 years, like, it was getting pregnant, losing a baby, getting pregnant, losing a baby. So before I had my son, I was probably pregnant like 5 times at that point. So it was a lot, but coming out of it, it was definitely a lot of spiritual aspects, which I'll talk about later, but just a tip: make sure you do your research about the family you marry into.
Absolutely.
Just as much as the person you're marrying. And that was just a big part of it was a lot of spiritual warfare. If anything, that's the main reason why I left, because it was just a lot. So, yeah.
So I think that, you said something that I think culturally, and again, we're going to keep saying it, we're Nigerians, right? But I think that is not something that, maybe African Americans, that's not something that just is like intuitive, right? To research the family, right? I think that's something that's very common to us. You tell your parents who you're gonna marry, and they do what they need to do, and they find out about the family, they find out about like the history and everything, and then they come back and say, okay, good to go. Or they're like, nah, we found some stuff. And I don't really think that that's as common or as much of a thing,
And I think
Western-wise.
Yeah, we talked about that on like another episode, like how your parents want you to marry someone from your town.
Right, from the towns, because it's easier for them to do that.
It's easier, and that's the main reason why they want that. At least my parents were always very clear, like, if you marry somebody that's, like, my parents are Edo, my husband's family is Yoruba, and my mom's had issue with it because it was like, how can I look up his family? How do I know if there's mental illness and their history? Like, they want to know all those things. Like, I know Igbo culture is they're very harsh on that. Like, they don't play. Like, they need to. They have like a name for it. Like, my Igbo people, can you put it in the comments?
Yeah, what is that?
They have like someone that they will send back home to like a private investigator of
sorts. PI for real.
A family PI.
Family PI.
Like, that's
we need more of them here.
The whole industry, but like when you say that, I feel like when we think of African parents, we think of them as so like overbearing and crazy and so much, but in your case, it's like that would have been helpful. You feel like that would have been beneficial.
And the thing was, because I shared briefly like the spiritual aspect of my
Yeah.
divorce on TikTok. It was a whole series.
Please go
And-
look that up.
Check it out. She really went in depth.
Yeah, and someone had asked me, they're like, did your mom, do anything or know about what was going on during this time? And honestly, I was a very lukewarm Christian at the time. So it was just a matter of, I know God, so because this man is in church, naturally I
Right.
thought that
he's a
he
man of
was
God.
a man of
Right,
God,
right.
right? And that's a perception that people have these days, but that's probably another subject, to
Come
be
on
honest.
now.
So I didn't even think anything was wrong with it. I know my mom prayed about it, she prayed real hard, and she told me, she was like, yeah, like, he's an okay person, but you're gonna have issues down the line, especially with his mom and stuff. And again, that's in my series.
How early did she say that to you?
We were still dating at the time, so it wasn't even close to marriage or anything. We were just dating. So I looked at her and I was like, okay, but did they say he was bad or did they just say the mom was bad?
We
trying to.
don't.
Can we finesse this?
We not
Can
gonna
we
get
still make this
nothing.
work?
I was like,
Can we still make this work?
Yeah.
Wow.
Especially at that age, like you're probably
I
just
don't know.
Yeah.
He's such a baby. So I still remember to this day, and I'm laughing and rolling my eyes like, wow, Kemy, like you really could have avoided this.
Wow.
But we learn.
Yeah.
Part of the
So
story.
it's
Yeah.
part of the story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Wow. You got anything for her?
Um,
Because I feel like I keep asking questions.
Yeah, no, I feel like you answered our next question, which was like, what do you wish you knew before marriage or while you were married that you didn't realize until after you were out of it?
I wish I knew about character.
Can you
'Cause that's,
elaborate?
yeah. Character is a big thing when it comes to marriage because, there's this perception in our culture that when you marry, the person will change,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, especially when it comes to marriage counseling, or just people who talk about relationships in general, they typically tell you the person you see in front of you, that's still going to be that
That's
same
them.
person. Marriage is not going to change them. It's just going to highlight those bad characteristics. And I wish I knew that at that age. I also wish I knew myself because I was very dependent on someone showing me the world. I was very dependent on someone creating this life when I should have experienced that life for myself. And if I had experienced that life for myself, I wouldn't have walked into a situation where I was so dependent on someone to make me happy.
Wow.
So that's why I always say, figure out who you are. Once you know who you are, you're not going to fall for all these counterfeits out there. And I feel like I did that. But again, we learn.
And Will Smith is like my new philosopher.
Girl.
I just
Girl.
read
Bye, girl.
I just read his book and he be dropping gems.
He can drop
And-
gems. Just stop. Please.
He be dropping gems. So he said something in his book, and he's talked about it on an interview, where the biggest mistake that people in any relationship make is you look to someone else to make you happy.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like people say that before. I've heard that like
Yeah.
happiness is from within and all that.
Yeah.
But I never thought about it like in the construct of marriage because it's like. Yeah, I get married because he makes me feel good. Like
Right.
I'm marrying him because he makes me happy. I'm marrying him
Yeah.
because I like being around him. So you think like that equates to my happiness, and it's not until you're in the marriage and you're like, wait, why do I still feel like why do I still feel unhappy, or why do I still feel unfulfilled, or why do I still feel like something is missing, even as a wife, even as a mother? And it's like you're going through life and you're checking all the boxes, but there's still emptiness.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love how you said it, that it is a personal journey.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
good.
and it's like you have to find that for yourself. So I just wanted to highlight that because I feel like that narrative around finding happiness within
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like knowing how to do it. Maybe we'll need to do an episode on just like self happiness
Yeah.
and how to kind of explore that, because it's a very complex.
Yeah.
How do I make myself happy? I don't know.
But not even that though. But happiness is static. It's not. It's fleeting. Happiness is not something that's permanent, right?
Yeah.
I think we talk about like joy is something you can have
Joy.
regardless.
Right.
I can be sad about something but still have joy.
But joy.
But happiness is like, again, something somebody can give you and somebody can take away.
Yeah.
Something I can give myself and something that's not there all the time. Money can make me happy for a time period. I can go shopping make me happy, but then I can go back to my house and realize I don't have no food in my house and be
Right,
sad.
right.
So it's not
You
something
gotta
that's,
return what you bought.
or not, or use the bag to cover you and wipe those tears. You know what I mean? Like it's not permanent, right?
Right.
And so I think that that's unfortunately where people get it mixed up as well. Where people think my marriage is going to be the end all be all. It's what's going to make me happy. It's going to give me joy when it can't, especially when we know how up and down the ebbs and flows of marriage are.
And it's like we just don't get that message enough. As
Yeah.
young as like in high school, through college, we don't get that message enough that marriage is not. Like people look at marriage, and I feel like I was the same way when I was younger. That I looked at marriage as like you know, you're on a bus stop and you're waiting for the bus. Marriage is the bus.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then once I get to the altar, I'm at my destination. That's it.
False.
Literally.
False. That is where you start. You ain't even started.
Like the car.
2 weeks after the wedding. That's when you start. Because you still on marital
what are you
bliss
talking
a week
about?
after the wedding.
Honeymoon phase.
But it's like
Please.
you feel like, yeah, I've arrived. Like
No.
now,
I think it's a culture thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's I keep saying this, but for real, like it is, because I think all I heard in church growing up was you women need to go to school, and when you finish school, get married. No one ever talks
Get your
about,
MRI.
okay,
No in between.
yeah.
No in between.
No in between. Just
in
get
between.
married, have kids. You're getting older, like, and just like it's just been ingrained, even from like back with our grandmothers and things like that. You know, they have kids young,
16.
like young.
My grandmother didn't go to school.
Yeah.
She started
Yeah.
at 16.
I don't think mine
They
was.
sacrificed their lives, and that's been ingrained in a lot of women, especially, you know, even after talking about my divorce and I went public with it. That was really the behind the story of a lot of people that
course.
DM'd me, and I was just like, wow, like we all had that same mentality, like
Oh yeah.
marriage is it.
Yeah. It's the end all be all.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
destination. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just a
good.
part of your journey.
Yeah.
That's real good. Since we're still there, Kemi, like, can you tell us, did you feel like you experienced a negative connotation or bitter taste in your mouth, or whatever the case may be, when it came to divorce culturally? Do you feel like you experienced like shame, guilt, sense of failure when you decided I'm done?
Like, what was that like mourning period like? Like, did you have that? Like, did you feel like you had to mourn the end of a marriage, or like, did you feel like I failed?
So it was two emotions. It was actually happiness and freedom, and it was mourning and shame. So I think the shame it really didn't come from me necessarily leaving my marriage. To be honest, a lot of people, they've left their marriage mentally.
Ooh.
They just haven't left physically.
I wish I could drop this mic. I can't drop this one, but I wish I could drop a mic.
Yeah, I was already done. I was just waiting. I was already waiting. I just wanted God to like say, hey, green light. And that year was the green light. So I think it was after the divorce, after like during the separation, even before the divorce kind of started, that whole year, just like learning how to be a single mom, like just figuring out how life is now, not being quote unquote married. If I felt a lot of shame because I felt like I disappointed my child. And I think when I had my son, that's kind of when the awakening happened. Like, is this something that I would be proud of in the future to say, yes, like my child and my children can emulate this type of marriage. And once I got to that point, it was just like what do I do now? So that shame really came from, oh my God, I disappointed my child. Like, now he's no longer in a 2-parent household. Now he has to go from household to household every other week. Like, it was that. It was also shame culturally as well, because it's just like, you have all these people that know, okay, you're married, and to the world, you know, he seemed like a great person, and he was taking care of me, quote unquote, because I wasn't out there like bashing him or anything.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of women don't do that, even though they're suffering. But you know, people didn't really know the ins and out, and it was just a lot of like, oh, what will people think of me? People will probably think, oh, I'm the problem. It was just a lot of self-blaming. And then I did mourn. I didn't mourn the marriage. I mourned the person I thought I could become in the marriage.
Tell us about that.
And
Wow.
yeah, it was because you're young and you're just like, now you start to look back and you're just like, why didn't you do better? So it wasn't really even years later. It's not until now. It was probably the beginning of this year that I actually finally forgave my younger self.
Wow.
It was because I'm just like,
Damn,
I'm sorry. You know, because Kemi at 22 ain't know nothing. And, you know, now you're a little bit mature and you're just like, I forgive you because you didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You tried your best with what you had and you were in love and you did what you were supposed to do as a wife with what you knew. So it definitely is a process. There was a period of anger as well because it's just like, bruh, like, this ain't work out. Like, fix it. You know, there was a point in when
You were mad at yourself?
I was mad at myself. I was mad at him because the divorce was ugly, y'all. Like, it was not cute. So it was just you didn't really realize who you married until you divorced them.
I hear that a lot.
And it's I would never wish that on my enemy. But at the same time, it opens your eyes to the situation you were really in, and you're just at the end of the day, you're grateful for coming out of something that was
like
so toxic.
Yeah,
this is the right thing.
Yeah,
this is the right thing. So, like, you know, for us, our platform is not to bash anybody, right? And so, can you tell us a little bit about what you feel made the divorce? Because again, we kind of talk about with celebrities, right? It's just like you see them in love, and then the next minute it's just like nasty.
Yeah.
Like what makes
what
it?
brings
What
that
brings
out
that
of
out?
people?
I think it's a factor of things. Like you talked about the love bombing. I think a lot of people, and let me say this, I feel like what I'm seeing, at least what I've experienced and what people have told me, like when they share their stories, a lot of women, especially African women, we're married to like a lot of narcissistic men, and we don't realize that until after the fact. You don't realize the type of person you're married until after you find enough strength to come out of it. And when I've done my research and when I was in therapy, it's not till I realized like this was actually a very toxic relationship. I just didn't know. And if you Google, you know, what it is to be in a narcissistic relationship, you'll understand why, quote unquote, a lot of women do stay, because it's a mental thing. It's a mental cycle. And that's what I was going through. There were periods where it was a high, and then there were periods where it was a low. And it was just a cycle that I was so used to that I just normalized it, right? So I think that was it.
Wow. So again, you mentioned that like to other people or to the outside world, he was viewed as like taking care of you, things were great, you know. So do you feel at any point that you were like ostracized or like people, well, why did you leave or whatever the case, or do you feel like people embraced you? Like what do you feel like you got from the community?
Yeah.
I didn't really have a community per se. I think when we were married at the time, there was a mom friend at the time. They were quote unquote a family friend. They were probably the closest to us at that time. And they were aware of the situations that was going on in the marriage. I think like the first time there was physical abuse, they were aware of it. But the response to that wasn't like, oh, are you okay? The response was just like, oh, it just flared out. Like there was nobody to protect me. Mind you, I'm young. So he's like, what, 9-10 years older than me. These people are also around the same age. So culturally, they already have that mentality, stay, because you just need to stay. So there was really nobody there. I didn't tell my mom really what was going on because I didn't want to disappoint her. You know, I didn't want to bring shame to her as well. So it wasn't anything that I really went public about, but yeah, I didn't feel like I had a covering, to be honest. And then the people that finally knew about it, like I haven't heard from them since. Nobody's come to me to ask me, are you okay? How's your son? And things like that. So yeah.
How does that, go ahead.
I want to say, how did you kind of, because it sounds like you have to kind of create community for yourself, or like be your own community. Can you talk more about that? Like, how did you push through that? Because there might be other people in that same position that feel so alone.
So eventually my mom found out, and I ain't gonna lie, she was very grateful because the whole time lady was in her prayer closet.
Like,
She saw this coming. She was just like,
she said a long time ago.
She said it, and she, you know, thank God for praying moms. That's all I can say.
Thank God for praying moms.
So, you know, when God was just kind of like, you know, my daughter gotta go. What's the question again? I'm having mom brain.
No, it's okay.
Girl, mom brain is a thing.
Girl, word. I'm the queen of that. The question was, how did you kind of create that community, or like where did you eventually find that?
Yeah. So when I eventually like kind of made a post about like leaving my marriage. I was actually shocked at the response. I thought a lot of people were going to be like, girl, why are you sharing this? Like, it's too much to put on social media, blah, blah, blah. But I found community through that post, actually,
I
because...
felt very proud of you.
Yeah.
Very proud of you.
Thank
Like,
you.
you're so private.
Yeah.
And, like, kind of, like, inward. So it's like you are the person that would be going through
And nobody would
hell,
know.
and
Yeah.
nobody would know. So for you to actually share, I was like, wow, I'm so proud of her.
Thank you. That was where I found community, and that's when like people started reaching out. Even people that were like in their 60s and were like, I know what you're going through. I went through that. So I found community through social media, and like, you know, even the people that I knew, I got closer to them because of the situation, because they're just like, wow, like even though you were suffering, I didn't know because you still showed up for me and things like that. So it was just like it was, social media is good sometimes.
Yeah.
Nice
I love
segue.
that.
Yeah.
Nice segue, right? Because that's my next question. So it was just like, so you are a front-facing figure. You're
Yeah.
an influencer. You are somebody who does put yourself out to whatever extent you choose to. How do you think you have shown up in the world as an influencer, and how do you feel like that part of your life has impacted your journey as an influencer?
So one of the things I prayed about before, after I left the marriage, I told God, like, if you get me out of this situation, use it for your good. Use it for your glory. Because I know that God doesn't make you go through the wilderness just so you can come out and just be there. There's a purpose even in the pain.
Yeah.
So I was just like, all right, God, you got me out of this situation, and I'm sure there's probably other people going through this. Give me the platform. Give me the words to just be present for people who probably were in the same situation as me. Because after I came out of it, I was just like, bruh, like, this was so lonely. Like, I had no one to talk to. Nobody could relate because everybody was married at the time. So everybody was in their highs, and I was just kind of like just there. So, sorry, what was the question?
No, you good. Just use your platform.
On my platform.
Girl, you good. You talking. Fine.
So I just kind of like, even though I'm styling and all of that stuff, I will have moments where if I am led, I just share bits and pieces of my story. Like, even while I was going through divorce, I didn't really share the whole thing, but I shared a little bit of the journey as to why it got there. And it all comes from a very spiritual perspective, because that's what it was literally spiritual warfare at the end of the day. And I realized that there are so many women probably in situations they didn't mean to get themselves into, and because of that, like, their destiny has altered, you know, like who you marry is a big part of your destiny. Like, I don't think people understand.
Girl, this one right here?
Like, I would not
Yeah.
show up in this capacity if I did not leave my marriage at the end of the day. And now it's become my ministry.
Yep.
You know,
You literally took the words out of my mouth when you said I style. The thing is, you know, and I am such a firm believer that, like, it does not matter what you do, that, like, your purpose is going to be in everything that you do. So you can be styling and still be ministering to people.
Yes.
So I was literally going to put that in a little bow. You said it yourself. You said it yourself. Absolutely. You know, for us, we didn't want to highlight, because again, we are going to tag all of her social media platforms, so that you can really go in depth and look and read on your own and listen on your own to her story. But we wanted to make sure we talked about the context of it, right? Because people oftentimes, you know, say divorce and it's like, period, right?
Yeah.
But we really want to highlight the, like, new beginning. You kind of just touched on it, like, you know, I would not be the person I am today had I not left where I was.
Yeah.
And so can you tell us a little bit about where you are now?
I'm happy.
Yeah. Happy, or you have joy? It's like,
Joy, all the above.
Yeah.
I just feel like my life has purpose again. I feel like I can see clearly. I feel like the blindfold has been removed. I feel like I can walk in my calling. And honestly, I thought that same thing, like, what do you do after divorce? Like, is this the end? Will I find love again? Who's going to marry me? I have a kid. You know, all of these crazy things.
That hand that you're
The
waving.
hand is waving. The hand is waving. I don't know if people picked it, but the hand is
My
waving.
glasses on sit right here.
Hand is waving. That's all I'm gonna say.
Cough, cough.
Cough.
Life is beautiful. Life turned out really, really well, and I've just seen the restoration of God literally take those stolen years from my 20 and replenish it times 100 in this season. So like my thing is, I always encourage people, like, divorce is not the end, it's just a new beginning. You're not starting from nothing. Like, you take your experience and you use that wisdom from your experience and you start life again.
Yes.
But you started with so much wisdom and knowledge, and that's really how my journey has been since then.
I love that. So I want to get emotional, but I just feel like God is all up and through the air, because you just, like, the title of our, look at the title of and she literally just read the title of
And she hasn't seen
the
our
episode,
notes
and she has
the
not
whole
seen our
time.
notes. She has not seen anything.
Wow.
So it's just like, we're firm believers. You know, we can reach out to so many people. We do. We both know people who have been divorced. You know what I mean? And, like, not to say that anyone is better or worse or whatever,
Yeah.
but we are firm believers, again, that, like, God has given us a platform, and the right people are going to be on our platform, and the right people are going to share a message that's going to resonate with somebody. And so, you know, you talked about marriage young,
Yeah.
and, like, you know, having a son, and, like, life is good now. So, like, what are the things that you do now that just, like, you feel like you couldn't have done before? Like, were you styling before? Were you in, like, I feel like you've always been fashionable, but was that something that was cultivated when you were, you know,
That's a
old
good question.
Kemy?
She said, "Oh, Kemy." I love that you said, "Oh, Kemy." I love that. So I actually started my styling business when I had my son, because I was home, because he was born really early. So I was home for that first year when he was born. So that's when I started my styling business. But as far as the potential and what God had for me, it was locked in that marriage. Like, it was, I couldn't be my full self, because I was still navigating the toxicity in the marriage while also trying to raise a child. So it felt so limited. I remember there was a time in the marriage where, like, I was just praying and I literally saw myself in a cage, like, spiritually. And, you know, I always flash back to that moment. I'm just like, wow, like, I don't know what God has taken me out of, but I'm glad he took me out of it.
Wow.
And so now I have this courage, this quote unquote glow that people keep telling me about.
Come on now. Sit, girl. Sit, girl.
Scoff. And I know, like, I traveled for the first time after my marriage. Like, you know, like, I went on vacation. Like, I went out the country the first time. I used my passport. Like, all these things I wanted to do while I was in my 20s that I couldn't really do because I was married the whole time. I started doing it. Like, I started dating myself. Like, I started dating, like, actually dating. I was like, oh, okay. So,
Out here.
the freedom was nice. It was nice.
That is great. I love that. So as we wrap up, you know, for us, we tend to always give takeaways, because we want to make sure that we are never just here just rambling and talking. We want to make sure we kind of put in a nice little bow, right? So for someone who has come out of the other side, who is thriving on the other side, you know, before we even get to that, right? So you talked about, like, your son, right? And so a lot of times you mentioned that, like, you felt you were locked in the marriage, but you were doing it on your own with a son and single.
Yeah.
I think that's just so interesting. Yeah. Like, you had the help. You were married and technically had support. You know, Memi and I talk about all the time, like, when we talk about, like, this fear of failure, you know, we have that person to rely on. But you were saying it was lighter on the other side when you were by yourself.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. But anyway, so, you know, obviously you're telling us that there is life after divorce. You were saying it, we believe it, we see it, right? What can you leave our listeners with when it comes to anything about divorce? Middle, in it, after, before, whatever.
So I guess the first thing I would say is your feelings after divorce is very valid. The anger, the shame, the sadness. I think culture tells you that once you come out of something so toxic, man up, do your life and just forget about it. But people don't realize that you're mourning something in the process of trying to figure out who you are as well.
Absolutely.
So, you know, like, mourn, be angry, seek therapy. I wish I got therapy like literally right after.
I'll tell you,
We gotta talk about that.
when I tell you, I was like, oh, we ain't talk about therapy. I was gonna say it. But go ahead.
I know we're doing a takeaway, but after you're done, we want you to talk about
Yes.
how did therapy help you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, sorry.
It's okay.
Find community. Community is so important because I literally had to learn to start asking for help. Like, I had to learn how to not live on my own because, you know, or go through things by myself, because that's what I was doing in the marriage. And I had to unlearn a lot of things. I would say even during the process of, you know, divorce legally and stuff like that, my biggest advice is just be prepared for the unexpected. I know, because for me, I want to be very raw about the divorce process. It's not fun. And I know that's why a lot of people are afraid to leave because of the legal aspect and stuff like that. But child, when I tell you, when it's time, God will make things easy for you. Amen. The divorce was not easy, but God aligned the resources, because I know where a lawyer was coming from. I randomly had a conversation with a coworker I don't talk to, and he was going through a divorce, and he referred me to a lawyer. Wow. That's how the whole process began. So, like, that point of being afraid, don't let people's opinion of who you might be or who you are or whatever, don't let it stop you from doing the right thing if it's the right thing. And I would say divorce should not be your first option, because I know people ask me all the time, like, girl, like, is divorce, like, did you no, like, it was a 6-year I stayed in the marriage for 6 years. I prayed, I fasted, and the last resort of me leaving was when I was like, all right, let's do marriage counseling. And the counselor was a pastor. And, you know, he literally was trying to help us. And the point where I knew that the marriage was actually over was when the pastor was just like, okay, you guys have to start and have a spiritual foundation. There's no spiritual foundation in this marriage. So all he asked was something so simple, guys. It was literally like, you guys need to start going to the same church. That was what he said, so that we can start this process of just reckoning and things like that. And at the time, my ex-husband was like, no. So it was just like, if this is the person that cannot submit to a spiritual authority, this is somebody I can no longer submit to. And that's when I realized I could no longer be in this marriage. But as far as resources, feel the feels, pray, find community, and blot out the negativity, because people are always going to have opinions, but you yourself know what you're going through. So find the people that, what's the word? Can relate. Find someone that you can relate to. Find support. And that's it.
That's really good. That's really good. Obviously we do try to plug therapy all the time, and but the thing is, you mentioned that you did go through therapy, and so can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think that, in your conversation, you're saying that, I love that you said divorce should not be the first option, because as a psychologist, I'm going to always say the same thing. I'm going to say that, have you gone through the whole shebang? Have you gone through everything? Have you done the counseling? Have you done the therapy? Have you found out? Have you done the homework? Have you decided that you have given out 125% each individually to this marriage before it's even a conversation, right? But I think, again, when you're doing the internal work on yourself, not just on your marriage, that's when you start to uncover things. That's when you start to learn about yourself, the things that you like, the things you don't like, the things that, like, this is why I am the way that I am. So I'm like, what was your process of therapy like?
It took me years. I didn't think I needed therapy until I started dating again, to be honest. Because I was like, I came out the marriage. I know what I want. Like, I'm free, whatever. And then when I started dating and I realized there was a pattern, a very similar. I remember talking to this one guy. Thank God for the Holy Spirit. I sensed the same spirit my ex-husband had in him. And that's when I was like, I gotta get into therapy because something about me or something is attracting the same type of people, and I need to know what it is.
Yeah.
So once I got to that realization, I was like, nah, I gotta call up somebody and figure this out.
And how was that process finding a therapist? I know we also talk about therapy, but you do have to date therapists too. So what was that like for you? Was your first call like the right one for you?
So I researched through like insurance and things like that, but at the end of the day, it was really word of mouth. It was just a friend.
A referral,
it was a friend, and he was talking about this therapist, like how she's great, and I was like, okay, I'll hit her up, and that was it.
I'll try.
I mean, because I don't know why our culture really shies away from therapy.
Yes,
and that was me for a couple of years, and I was like, nah, like this ain't healthy, and I nah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, Kemy. That's good.
What were some things you uncovered? If you want to share.
Yeah, it's nothing crazy.
I'm pretty up there. I'm pretty all right.
I think for me it was mostly deep rooted in just my upbringing as a child, and having I literally was repeating the same cycle that my mom had, and I didn't realize it until I went into therapy. So it was just a whole lot of childhood things, because my mom, she married somebody that was like 20 years older than her, so it was just like I normalized a lot of things, and that's why I entered into something, because I thought it was just the normal.
Based on
based on what I saw. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Mammy, what kind of takeaways do you have for that episode?
I think my main one is just like our overarching theme that do we want to avoid divorce? Yes. Do we get married to get divorced? Never. Right? But there are situations where there is more for you on the other side.
Yeah.
And it's like you won't know that until you've like fought for your life in this marriage, and you've done everything you can do to establish and make this marriage work before you realize like, okay, I'm tapped out. I keep running into this brick wall, and I don't think there's anything left for me here.
That's good. So that's good. Yeah. So we are so grateful that you guys tuned in to this episode. It's a heavy one, but I think in the heaviness we've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, which I think is the most beautiful thing about this conversation. Kemy, can you plug where people can find you one more time?
Yes, you guys can find me on Instagram at Styled by Kemy. And my actual series that Memi was talking about before is on TikTok, Styled by Kemy 16 on TikTok. And occasionally I'm on Twitter here and there, but yeah.
Yes. So, again, this has been another episode of Chats from the Peak. We ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on your notification bell to stay tuned. This episode was amazing. Kemy, thank you for your vulnerability. We appreciate it. People need to hear it. People need to see what it looks like to come out on the other side, and we're so grateful. So, thanks for tuning in.